Welcome back to our video. Today we are back for another NFL tier list. This time we're ranking which teams had the best draft of the NFL 2023 draft that just happened. I'm really excited to do this video. I was going to do a different style draft video, but I figured, you know what? You guys always seem to really like the tier list videos, and this is a perfect thing to rank teams on. So we're just going to get right into it. First, we have the Cardinals. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. There is a lot of stuff for me to have to, keep in mind when doing like a draft video. So normally I would know a lot of stuff kind of off the top of my head, but I'm going to be checking, I'm not going to lie, to make sure I'm getting the players right when they're like wherever they went in the rounds and all that kind of stuff, because it can be a lot to remember, especially with teams that like I just don't know anything about. Not that I don't know anything about, but don't pay attention to as much as other teams. The Cardinals, though, I think they had a great draft. We're actually going to put them in the A tier. So they had the third overall pick, and they traded back with the Texans, who traded back up. More on that later, though. They ended up taking, I believe it was Paris Johnson, who was an offensive tackle, sixth overall, I believe it was, which I love the pick. I think you got to protect Kyler. And, they also drafted Clayton Tune, who's another backup for Kyler. Not another, but a backup for Kyler. I believe he's from Houston, but I could be wrong there. And I like it a lot, though. I mean, you need to strengthen the offensive line. The Cardinals have a lot of problems all across their team, offense and defense. And the way they addressed the defense was in round 2, they drafted B.J. Ojulari. I think it's a great pick. He's a very good edge rusher, and I think they honestly did very well with what they had. I know other teams were also looking to trip to number 3. I believe it was the Titans who also wanted C.J. Stroud, but then once the Texans selected him at 2, they kind of backed off. So could they have gotten more and even some players for the pick? Maybe, but for what they did across their entire draft class, I honestly thought it was a pretty good draft. So they're going to go to A. The Falcons are an interesting one. So first off, I mean, the one that matters, I believe, the most is Bijan Robinson. Running backs don't usually go that high. And, it was one of those players where even if he does go that high, you can't even knock it, because it's like, yeah, you know what? I mean, he's pretty unbelievable. The only thing is I feel like the Falcons could have used maybe someone more on the defensive side of the ball. But at the same time, like, Bijan Robinson has potential to be, one of the best running backs in the entire league. And what that also does is that really, really strengthens that offense. You have Kyle Pitts, you have Drake London, you now have Bijan Robinson. You also have Tyler Algier, who had a very good rookie season last year, I was a little surprised to see them go with Bijan. But now they have, like, 2 running backs that are very good. Desmond Ridder, I believe, is their quarterback as of right now. We'll see how that goes. But overall, I think Bijan is the biggest pick here. But they did have a couple other good picks as well. The other player I had to check, I could not remember who it was. I believe it was Zach Harrison, who they got as a defensive end. I also like that pick a lot for the Falcons, as they had pretty much no defensive end pressure or defensive line pressure, honestly, at all, whether that was from the edge or up the middle. They definitely needed help there, so I like that pick on day 3, I believe it was, a lot. So I'm going to put the Falcons in B tier. I don't think they had the craziest draft, but I do think they addressed things that did need to be addressed. It wasn't some kind of master class or anything, but it was a very respectable draft. And I'm honestly, being a Panthers fan, really dreading having to play Bijan Robinson 2 times a year. Moving on to the Ravens. Now, the Ravens are another interesting team here because, in my opinion, the story of the offseason was more what was going to happen with Lamar rather than the draft. And so once they re-signed Lamar and went out and got Odell, I was kind of thinking, well, now what do they do in the draft? Because they still have other team needs. So do they just kind of put their foot off the gas and just, select guys for depth, or do they just really kind of, keep their foot in the gas and get more players that are making an instant impact? And they did that. They drafted Zay Flowers from Boston College. I liked him a lot. I was really hoping he was going to fall somehow and the Panthers get him, or the Panthers trade back up and get him. That obviously did not happen. I absolutely love the pick. I think the Ravens are finally looking like they are all in on Lamar. They re-signed him. They got him Odell, who, in my opinion, I'm not going to lie, I don't think he's going to be the most productive in his career coming off an injury, but he's still Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, you really can't hate on that to a certain degree, because he was great for the Rams, and hopefully he bounces back off this knee injury. But Zay Flowers is going to be very good. Of course, they still have Mark Andrews and then J.K. Dobbins as well. So I like the Ravens draft a lot. For me, that was by far the highlight, was Zay Flowers. I'm going to put the Ravens, I'm going to say in A or B. We'll put them in, okay, you know what? Also, if you guys are new here, I do at the very end go around and change things if I don't like the way they look. In case, because while I'm doing them, I'm trying to keep it kind of on a rhythm so I can keep talking about teams. We will put them in B, but just know that as of right now, that's a very high B category, at least for me. So just that's how it's going to be for right now. Next up is the Bills, who actually end up getting Dalton Kincaid as a tight end after Dawson Knox left them to go to, I believe it was Houston. It's a great pick, in my opinion. I mean, he's a great pass catcher, been an instant weapon for Josh Allen. Although, in my opinion, a even better pick is the offensive guard, O'Cyrus Torrence. I gotta check his name. It was O'Cyrus Torrence. I just had to make sure because I always get that name wrong. But he was a bit of a steal. He kind of slipped a little bit, and he is very, very good. Great offensive lineman pick. The Bills draft again. They and the Ravens are very, very close for me as far as like the A-B tier, something like that. Because I put the Ravens in B, though, and they're so similar, I'm going to put them in B as well. I could probably honestly do this, and people probably won't get mad. I could probably move them down here and move them there, and people wouldn't get mad. Just know that that is very, very blurred for me right now as far as I'll even move them actually right here so you guys know they're very close to the A tier. But next is the Panthers. So Panthers, obviously, first overall got Bryce Young. Personally, I absolutely love the pick. I thought it was the best quarterback in the class. That's who I wanted. They made some interesting moves. They got Jonathan Mingo, who I actually really like as a wide receiver prospect. And then they also traded to get DJ Johnson from Oregon. And for those of you that don't know who this is, which is probably a lot of you, and I didn't know who he was either until we picked him. Now I was like, well, I have to research this guy now. He is a defensive end who at Oregon at one point played like, I think in one game, he caught a pass as a tight end for like 10 yards and then ended the game getting like a sack or something. So he's kind of a very raw prospect. He's very athletic. He can do both things. Was it worth it to trade up and get him? I don't really know. Personally, I think the Panthers could have sat where they were and just got him anyway. But you know what? It is what it is there. Overall, though, I don't think the Panthers had the craziest draft, just like my honest opinion. I love Bryce Young, but just one pick does not mean that you're obviously an S-tier draft, at least in my opinion. I do think they had a good draft, and I think I'm honestly going to just put them in B. We have a lot of B's so far, but I can see we have some better classes coming up, so just wait on that. I'm putting in B for right now. That's just kind of how I feel, but I mean, you might disagree about that. Next is the Bears. Now, the Bears really went and got a lot of things they need. They got Darnell Wright, who's a tackle. Absolutely amazing pick. You got to protect Justin Fields. That man was running for his life every single play last year, so I love that pick. Later on in the draft, they got Penei Sewell's younger brother, Noah, for a linebacker. I like that pick as well. They also provided a lot of depth and maybe even potential starters on the defensive back and defensive line area, which, again, I like a lot. The Bears, honestly, I think they've had a great offseason. I think trading back the pick with the Panthers was a great move. I think they got a lot in return. They got DJ Moore, which I think was a great trade for them. And for the draft, I think they kept that hot streak going. Nothing like insane that really turns my head, but they had a great draft. I mean, it wasn't mind-blowing, but they didn't underwhelm either, in my opinion. So I'm going to give them an A. I really like the Bears draft. Next is the Bengals. Now, the Bengals also, I think, had a very good draft. First round, they got Myles Murphy from Clemson, defensive end, which I like to pick a lot because they don't have a lot of pressure on the outside sometimes. They do have Sam Hubbard. They do have Trey Hendrickson, who are very good. Myles Murphy, though, provides some depth there and maybe a potential starter. They also have Joseph Asai. So it was a great pick to really provide a lot of depth and then, again, have the upside of being a starter. Now, for me, I really, really like the Bengals' third-round selection, which was Jordan Battle, who is a safety from Alabama. In my opinion, I think that was a great pick. The Bengals need a safety. They need just defensive backs in general. They let Jesse Bates go. He went somewhere else. And then they also, I believe it was Von Bell left as well to go to Carolina. So they needed safeties. They went on and got one. I think Jordan Battle is honestly a great pick. And overall, the Bengals had a great draft like that. They got a lot of receivers. I would assume they're expecting Tyler Boyd to be gone after this year. T. Higgins, personally, I think he's going to stay. I feel like the hype of the trade rumors. I don't think there's a whole lot of truth to that. But you know what? If there is, they're definitely preparing for it just in case. I think it's very, very smart. So personally, I think the Bills had a great draft. I'm going to put them in A for sure. The Browns, I had a very interesting draft because they drafted Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA as a quarterback. Now, in my opinion, I thought this guy has like a chance to kind of turn heads in the NFL if given the chance. He's very, very athletic, just like Anthony Richardson, without all of the, like crazy physical attributes, but he is very athletic. And he can extend in plays. His decision making as well is kind of questionable. But the reason I bring that up is because Deshaun Watson last year had a very iffy year. Now, granted, obviously he didn't have an entire season to practice. He hadn't played in like over a year. So I'm not saying he's going to replace Deshaun Watson, but I am saying if something happens to Deshaun Watson where he gets hurt or anything like that, I think we'll call him DTR. I think he has the opportunity to really step in the game and maybe turn heads, maybe become a starter. I think there's a potential upside there if given the opportunity. Other than him, though, they didn't have a first round or didn't have a pick until pick 74, which was Cedric Tillman, who's a wide receiver. They need wide receivers. I think it's a good pick. I wasn't the craziest wide receiver off the board. No, but I think the Browns had a solid draft. I wouldn't put them up like anywhere super, super high or anything, but I would give them a B as well, which it looks so weird right now because I have like only A and then a lot of B, but it's kind of mixed in with like some of the teams that had really good drafts. So I promise we'll get to some S's and we'll probably even get to some C's, maybe a D. I'm not really sure if any team's deserving of a D, but we'll see what happens. Moving over to the Cowboys, so their first round pick was Mozzie, I think Smith it was. I think that's his name. I should probably check, but I'm just trying to get through this and get through these teams. He was a defensive tackle. I was very surprised by the pick. I know a few Cowboys fans were all surprised as well. Though what I've heard is that they think he's going to be a very good run stuffer, and that was, I guess, an issue for the Cowboys last year, was they had great, pressure off the edge, but had trouble stopping the run sometimes, and this guy's going to be able to really help with that. If that's the case, that's a great pick. At the very end of the draft, they also got Deuce Vaughn, who's a running back. I believe his dad actually works for the Cowboys and got to be in on the call when they called his son to draft him, which honestly is very, very cool. That guy, of course, I guess will be backed up to Tony Pollard, who will obviously be starting. The Cowboys overall, I think, had a very good draft. Again, they're one of those teams where I don't think you give them an A, but I think you do give them a B. I think they had a solid draft. I don't think it was anything insane, but again, they addressed things that did need to be addressed. And then next is the Broncos. Now, the Broncos, because the Russell Wilson trade did not have the most draft picks this year, did they do all they could with it? I'd say yes. None of the picks really wow me. In my opinion, they're probably a high C, low B draft. They did get Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, who's a wide receiver. Personally, I think it's a very underrated pick. I think that guy actually has the opportunity to be very, very good, especially with Jerry Jeudy always having trade rumors circling around him, and then also him honestly getting the injury bug quite often, unfortunately. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if he stays on the team. Either way, though, I think Marvin does get a chance to play and get some actual minutes. They also got a linebacker. I believe his name was Drew something. I can't remember his last name, but he's very athletic, and he was a great pick for him as well. To me, though, that trade just really hurt their draft class. They weren't able to capitalize off of it enough to be in the same tier as the other teams in B. So that's why they're in C. Next is the Lions. So the Lions, I don't want to put in D, and I'm not going to because here's why. We'll put them in C. So I'm sure all of you know that are watching this video, with the 12th pick, they took Jahmyr Gibbs, a running back from Alabama, which, very interesting, to say the least. Now, they traded back from 6. I believe that was what who the Cardinals traded with to move in to select their offensive tackle, and the Lions moved back. But a report said the Lions were comfortable taking Jahmyr Gibbs with that pick anyway, but they traded back. So in my mind, it's like, why trade back? Just take Bijan Robinson, who's a better running back right there. I'm not really sure why. I don't know. You know what? I don't know. They looked very, very pumped in that draft room to land him, so maybe they have some huge plans for him. I mean, okay, not maybe. They definitely have to. They traded with DeAndre Swift to the Eagles, and they drafted this guy who they must have just really, 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 really liked. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a great pick. Personally, I don't love it, but you never know what can happen. They also got Laporta, who's a tight end. Again, that was also questionable with Michael Mayer still on the board at that time. They did get Brian Branch, though, who was definitely a great pick. He fell a little bit. He's a safety. I think he's definitely going to help him out. He's also, I believe, from Alabama as well. And they also, they got Jack Campbell, I believe is his name, who's a linebacker. Again, I don't know if he should have been selected 18th overall. I don't honestly think he should have been. Maybe it's a reach, maybe it's not, I don't know. There's always going to be those people, though, that are like, well, when he turns out to be an all-pro, you're going to, regret saying that. But just because the player turns out to be an incredible pick does not mean it was a great pick at that time, because it might work out for him, but you also have to remember like who they could have got, or could they have just waited to select that player they wanted as well. You also have to think about that, because I remember last year the Patriots selected Cole Strange and everybody was very confused, like, why would you do that? Then he actually ended up having a great year where they're like, see, that pick worked out. Whereas, yes, it did, but you still could have selected him later and maybe got a different player right there. But you know what? I'm not an NFL GM. I'm just talking about it. So, you know, that's all I have to say about that one. The Lions, I think, had a very underwhelming draft. I think they could have done a lot better. But again, if they have some crazy plan for Jahmyr Gibbs and he turns out to be amazing, then I guess, you know, it is what it is. Was it a great pick at the time? Not in my opinion, but if it works out for him, that's great. Next is the Packers, though. Packers had a very interesting draft as well, because this is the first draft in a very long time that Aaron Rodgers is not on the team. So everybody was very interested to see what they're actually going to do with that. In the end, the Packers ended up selecting 13 total players. So a lot of draft players, or draft selections, I should say. They added Lucas Van Ness, I believe is his name, who's an edge rusher. I think it is a good pick. I don't really know. I think a lot of people wanted to go like receiver, you know, make it someone big off the board. They didn't. I think it's maybe a safer pick, and I think it'll probably work out for him, honestly. They did get a receiver in the end in Jaden Reed from Michigan State, who again is going to help out Jordan Love. And speaking of helping out Jordan Love, they also got Luke, I believe his name, Musgrave from Oregon State, I think. He's a tight end. And again, they are really building around Jordan Love, which I'm really interested to see how he plays next year, because when he came in the game this past year, I thought he looked a little promising, honestly. I hope it works out really well for him. The Packers, though, I would say are also with the Ravens and Bills with that like A minus B plus range, I would say. I'm going to put them in B, and again, at the end, I might move some of those teams up to A. We'll just see how it goes. Next is the Texans, though. The Texans had a very crazy draft. So at 2, they select C.J. Stroud. A lot of people thought it was going to be Will Anderson, and that was not the case. They took C.J. Stroud and then traded back up to 3, back-to-back top 3 picks, and then got Will Anderson as well. In my opinion, the Texans, they need something to just give that franchise a spark. And I think a big trade like that with 2 huge players off the board that early is really cool. I think it's going to give them not only on the field a big boost, but also just off the field with some real confidence that they can actually turn that team around and take the next few steps. I'm giving the Texans an A. I don't know how, certain analysts maybe feel about that. Personally, I love it, though. I like C.J. Stroud a lot. I would have been cool with the Panthers getting him. I preferred Bryce Young, but I would have been fine with that. I think he's a great quarterback, and I really hope the best for him. And Will Anderson was one of the best overall players in this entire draft. So they're going an A in my opinion. Next is the Colts. Okay, so the Colts are a very interesting team. I think they had one of the best drafts. I'm not going to lie. I think they go in either S or A. I'm going to put them in... I want to put him in S. I'm just going to leave him there for right now, honestly, okay? Because the Colts had a crazy draft. So first off, the Colts at 4, they select Anthony Richardson. Now, I'm not sure how many of you feel about that pick. Personally, I love it. I think the Colts have tried to do their bring in a veteran thing, and it's just not going to work. It's time to move on. Take a different approach. Personally, I think with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud off the board at that point, you just don't take Will Levis, in my opinion. I think Richardson's just better. I don't think you take Will Levis that high. I really don't. And that's what they did. They took Anthony Richardson. I love the pick. I hope he's really good for him. I think he will be. Even if he's not an immediate, crazy, talented starter, I think give him time and he will be very good. They also had a huge draft like the Packers. They had 12 total picks. They got 2 offensive linemen in there. They got a defensive back from Kansas State, Julius Brents, in there. They got, I believe, a defensive end as well somewhere in there. I could be wrong about that. But then they also got wide receiver Josh Downs in there. Now, again, some people said he was overrated. Some people said he was underrated. I heard, literally opposite sides of the spectrum on that. Some people loved the pick. Some people hated the pick. Personally, I think pairing the young wide receiver with the young quarterback is going to work out very well for them. I think Josh Downs is very, very talented, and it will be a very fun duo to watch. But yeah, that's all for the Colts. I thought it was an amazing draft. Maybe that belongs in A instead of S, but I'm just keeping it there. I thought the Colts had a great draft. Next is the Jaguars, who again had a very big draft, but I believe 13 total player selections, with their first round pick being an offensive lineman, because I believe their other one they already had is either hurt or suspended. I cannot remember which one it is, but they selected, I believe, Anton Harrison, I think, with that pick, who I think is going to be very good. But very big draft. They got a lot of depth in there. I believe they also got a receiver in there, I think. So the Jaguars draft, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because really they didn't have any players that really wowed me. But they did, again, address things. It was a very solid draft. So for that, I'm just going to put them in B. They're not really showing off, but they didn't do a horrible draft either. They're just going to stay right there, and that's it for the Jaguars. And for the Chiefs, I already know I had to read this because I don't know how to say the name, but with their 31st overall pick, they selected an edge rusher named Felix Ondike Uzama. I may have said that wrong, but that's my best try at that. Overall, though, the Chiefs had just 7 selections. And I honestly don't think they picked anything too crazy. But again, they got a cornerback in there, and they got the defensive end, who, again, I do think is necessary for that team. They don't have any crazy defensive end. They have Chris Jones, a defensive tackle, but they don't always get a ton of pressure on the edges. So hopefully, we'll just call him Felix, can do that. I'm going to give him a B for that. I don't think they had a crazy draft, but again, I think they are right there in the middle pretty much. The next is the Chargers. The Chargers, of course, with their first round selection, selected Quentin Johnston from TCU. Now, a lot of people were like, oh, wow, they just got another Mike Williams, which, to be fair, is a pretty good comparison because he's a very big receiver that can go up and get the ball. And honestly, I like the pick. I think it's a good pick. Some people say he's a bit overrated. I don't know. Let me know. Honestly, comment down below what you think about Quentin Johnston going to the Chargers. Was that a good pick, or should they have went a different direction? Personally, I like it. I think it's a good pick, but I could see people thinking they could went a different direction there. But other than that, they got a linebacker. I believe it was round 2 or 3. And I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. I know it's like Tulipi or Tulu or something. I'm really sorry. I cannot pronounce the name. Either way, though, for that, the Chargers do get just a B. We have a few kind of B's here in a row, but it is what it is there. Next is the Chargers, who, again, I think have the biggest draft class we've seen so far. I think 14 total picks. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because personally there aren't any really crazy picks for me in there, but they had a very, very solid draft. They got a lot of things they needed. Their first round selection was an offensive lineman. I believe they got multiple of those, in fact. But to me, the most interesting pick has to be Stetson Bennett. I got to talk about this because him going to the Rams, in my opinion, I thought he was going to go much later into a team where he wouldn't really see the field. But the Rams, he could potentially get a chance to play in a game there. Matthew Stafford is getting older. He has struggled with injuries. So Stetson Bennett may get a shot to see the NFL field. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's really cool, honestly, because a lot of people have been hating on him. I've made jokes about his age. I know a lot of people have. I don't love him as a prospect. I don't think he's that great. But I want to see what happens if he gets in the game. I really do. And I think it was a decent pick for the Rams at that point in the draft. Just getting a quarterback and saying, you know what? We'll see what happens. If Stafford gets hurt, we'll draft it back up. And I guess they like Stetson Bennett. And overall, I think it was a really interesting draft. The Rams really had a big draft where it took a long time to break it down. But I will just say, in general, they did get a safety. They got a linebacker. And I believe they also got another receiver as well. So they did a great job addressing a lot of things. But got to keep the video moving. I'm going to give them an A. I thought they had a great draft. But again, I can't spend so much time on that, so we're going to keep going. So next is the Raiders. Now, the Raiders, I think they had a very, very good draft. So they got Tyree Wilson, number 7 overall, and I think he has a foot injury or had a foot injury, but if he is healthy, I think that is an amazing pick. They also let go of, or I guess not really let go, they traded Darren Waller to the Giants and replaced him with Michael Mayer. They drafted him. Again, I think that was a phenomenal pick. I think it was a great move by the Raiders. They've had a very solid offseason, honestly, and I think the draft class was no different. I'm also giving the Raiders an A. I thought they had a very good draft. As for the Dolphins, they have the smallest draft we've covered so far with only 4 selections. One was Cam Smith, who's a corner. They also got Elijah Higgins, I believe it was, who was a tight end. They got an offensive tackle with their last pick. And they also got Devin Achane, I believe is how you say his name, who's a running back. And honestly, I think the Dolphins actually did a pretty good job with what they had. But being, a draft with only 4 picks, none of them wowed me to the point where I could really put them with the other teams in B. So I'm going to put them in C. Not that they had a C draft, there just wasn't a whole lot to go over to where I don't think I can compare them to like the Bills or the Ravens, for instance, and put them in that same tier. So they're going to go in C for that reason. But over to the Vikings. Next to the Vikings, who I think had a very sneaky good draft. They got Jordan Addison in the first round, who I think is going to be a very good wide receiver too, to help out Justin Jefferson since Adam Thielen is now going to be in Carolina. They still have KJ Osborne still, but I think Jordan Addison is going to see the field a lot and make a lot of great plays there. They got a defensive back. I think his name is, I have to check it, something Blackman, I think. And yes, Mekhi Blackman from USC, I think, is a very, very good pick. They also got Jaren Hall, a quarterback from BYU, which, again, you never know. Do they get North Kirk? Do they give him a shot? I don't really know. I guess we'll find out. But I like the Vikings draft a lot. I think they are a low A tier team. And also, whenever I say that, that does not mean I think the Chargers had a low B tier team. If I specifically say that, then yeah, but like I'm not like saying, you know, for every team. So don't take that too seriously. I'm just saying it. I'm not actually putting every team where I think they are in that specific category, just so we're all on the same page there. Next is the Patriots. Patriots actually had a very good draft, I think. They got Christian Gonzalez, who fell all the way to 17 after they even traded back, which in my opinion is really, really crazy. I can't believe that happened. I think it was an amazing selection. If he didn't fall, I would have said they should have went with a receiver, but you really can't pass up a cornerback that good, especially, you know, at 17. So I think it was a great pick. Now, interestingly enough, later in the draft, they did get a receiver with Kayshawn. I don't know how to say his last name. I don't know if it's okay. It's Boutte. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but either way, he fell very far. And I believe it's because his athleticism, or whatever they use to like scale that kind of stuff, he did not score very well as far as explosiveness goes and all that kind of stuff. So I am very interested to see if he gets in, if he ends up, you know, kind of proving them wrong, making some great plays. I don't really know. But overall, the Patriots, I think, had a very good draft class. I think usually I think that they're very boring in the draft. They just trade back repeatedly. Belichick does absolutely nothing. This is, I think, much different. I think it was very exciting. I'm actually going to give the Patriots an A on their draft. The Saints are going to be a quick one to talk about because, quite honestly, I don't think it was the craziest draft in the world. I think it's like the perfect just B-tier draft. I'm going to put in there. Their most notable selection was Brian Brees, who I believe went to Clemson. And I think it's really cool that guy's overcome a whole lot to get to where he is, and hopefully he can keep that going. He's a very easy player to root for, and I think he's going to be a very good player for them as well. So the Saints, very solid draft. I don't think anything too crazy really to talk about there, but we'll just move on to the Giants. So next is the Giants. In round one, they selected Deonte Banks, who is a cornerback. I think that was a very, I'm not sure if it was the best pick in the world as far as the player goes, but they needed a corner. So in my opinion, I think it was still a good pick. But I think the player everybody wants to talk about is, okay, well, hold on. Before we get to there, they also selected John Michael Schmitz, who is a center. That was a very good pick. I want to cover that before I went on to the next player, because I think that shouldn't be overlooked. That was a great selection. But the player that now everybody wants to talk about, I think, is Jalin Hyatt from Tennessee. He had like 5 touchdowns by himself as a receiver against Alabama last year. And people had a lot of questions about, is he a great route runner, or does he literally just run straight and score touchdowns, and he's just that fast? And honestly, I don't know. I want to find out, though. I think he's a very good selection for the Giants at that point in the draft. He was not selected very early on. He fell very far. So for that selection, that far back, I think it's great value. You have a lot of upside there if he happens to, you know, just really turn out to be a great receiver. At the very least, he is very, very fast. So he's got to be on some kind of deep post and just hope he gets lost in the defense or something like that. The Giants, I'm going to give him an A. I think they had a very good draft. Next to the Jets, who I think had a very just kind of mediocre draft. They did select Will McDonald, an edge rusher from Iowa State, who might try to be very good. I don't really know. I believe they got a center as well. Overall, I think their draft honestly got better the longer it went on, because they got more, I think, steals and good selections for good value later on than they did up front. But overall, I'm just going to give the Jets a high C, low B. I'm going to put them in there just because we don't have a lot of teams in C, honestly. There's a case it could be in B. I mean, it's not, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, trash the Jets draft, but I'm going to put them in C. I think it was a pretty underwhelming draft. Next is the Eagles, though. So the Eagles, I'm going to put in S tier. I think there was actually a report that said some NFL executives were like annoyed with how much praise that Howie Roseman was getting for his draft. And honestly, I think it was a great draft. I think he did a great job. So first off, Jalen Carter falls. The Eagles pick him, which was a no-brainer at that point because he was by far the best player on the board. Then you also get Nolan Smith, also from Georgia, at that point in the draft. Again, I think it was a great pick. And then later on they get, I believe it was Kelee Ringo, also from Georgia, because they're just the Philadelphia Bulldogs at this point. But I think those are all great players, and they're great picks. And honestly, I don't really know how they managed to land all of those players. But I think it was a great draft. I'm going to put them in S. Could they be an A? Sure, but you know what? I gotta add more teams to the S, and I think they're very deserving. I think it was an absolutely amazing draft. It'd be kind of funny though, if you're not an Eagles fan, to just have them all like just flop after, like, you know, how hyped up this draft was, all these Georgia defensive players, and they just do nothing. I think it'd be kind of funny. But you know, we'll see what happens there. But we're gonna have back-to-back S tier teams though, with the next one being the Steelers. I honestly love the Steelers draft. But first off, 14th overall, they got Broderick Jones, who I think was a great selection for an offensive lineman. Now, I think the biggest pick and the biggest name that they got was Joey Porter, who happened to fall out of the first round, just barely, the very beginning of the second round, which I think was actually technically the 32nd overall pick, because the Dolphins had their first round pick stripped this year. So I guess technically it was kind of still a first round pick, but either way, I think that was a great choice for the Steelers. He fell very, very far, and I think at that point it was a no-brainer. That's who you want, and that's who you pick, and I think he's going to be a great corner. I think he fits the Steelers culture very well, and I believe he's also playing where his dad played, which is, honestly, you can't write a better story than that. So Steelers, honestly, amazing draft. And also, before I forget, they also got Darnell Washington, another big name from Georgia. He was a huge tight end, although I believe it was uncovered that he had some kind of knee injury or knee issue, which made his draft stock kind of fall and teams just pass on him. There's a lot of upside there, because at the very least, he is huge. He can definitely block, because Pat Freiermuth is a great tight end. And you know what? If Washington doesn't become some amazing jump ball tight end, then at the very least, he can help them in the ground game, getting guys out of the way for Najee Harris. So either way, great job by the Steelers over the Seahawks. So 5th overall, the Seahawks selected Devin Witherspoon. People, I think, were very split over this pick, whether it was really good or really bad. Personally, I'm going to stay very neutral here. I don't know a lot about Devin Witherspoon. So I'm not really going to give an opinion on that. I don't know. Was it the best pick? Maybe, maybe not. There's definitely better players on the board like Jalen Carter, but if that's what they needed, then maybe it's a great pick. But truthfully, I don't know what Devin Witherspoon was as a prospect, so I'm not really going to go super in depth on that. But if you guys like the pick or not, you know, you can always comment that down below. The biggest pick, though, at least the biggest name, is Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. Now, in my opinion, I think it's a phenomenal pick, because it really just gives Geno another weapon who I think is going to be very, very good. I think at that one point in the offseason before the draft, it's always that one time where, like, all of a sudden people just, like, want to hate on all the best prospects to, like, you know, see if, like, you know, I don't even know. I guess just drop drama before the draft and, like, oh, maybe he can't play at this level. And I get it. He was supposed to be maybe slower and all that kind of stuff, but I don't even think he had a bad 40 time, and he's a great route runner. So really, I think it's a great pick. Helps out Geno, gives him another weapon next to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So really great pick there. They also selected Zach Charbonnet from UCLA as a running back, who I believe is actually supposed to get some carries with Kenneth Walker, who had an amazing rookie year. So that's very interesting and something to watch there as well. And then at the very end of their draft, they also drafted Kenny McIntosh, another running back who I think also could maybe see the field as far as some pass catching downs. So Seahawks really loaded up on running backs in this draft, but I think they had an amazing draft, honestly. I wouldn't say, I don't know, I want to put him in S, but really the Devin Witherspoon pick does make me a little questionable on him, because I don't know how great of a pick that was. If they should be an S though, and you love Devin Witherspoon pick, let me know down below. And you know what, maybe it belongs there, but I'm just going to leave him in A for right now. Next to the 49ers, who did not have a pick for a while thanks to the Trey Lance trade and the Christian McCaffrey trade, one of which is already, you know, well worth it. Will Trey Lance's pick be, or trade be? I don't really know. But for their first overall pick, or I guess I'm not sure why I keep saying that, for their first pick of their draft, they got Jair Brown, who was a safety, which they definitely needed. And honestly, that was kind of the highlight for me, because everything else I didn't love. I think they reach on their tight end pick maybe a little bit. But you know what? I guess we'll see. But there's really just not a lot there. Kind of the same as the Dolphins, where like they just didn't really get enough players that were really that convincing to me to put them in B with everybody else. So were they good picks for the team? Maybe, I don't know, but I just don't feel like putting them in the same tier with B, where a lot of the teams kind of ranked for me. But either way, over to the Buccaneers. Next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I'm not going to lie, I think the Buccaneers actually had a very solid draft, and they're going to be the only team from the NFC South to actually get into the A tier, so that's pretty cool for them, I guess, if anyone actually cares about my rankings. But you know, it's what it is. This video's been going on for so long, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just really trying to get through this at this point. They got Casey in their first round, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were gonna go with Levis. I really did. I thought they were gonna go for Levis, just see what happens and see if he can end up replacing Mayfield, who they currently have. Or maybe it's Kyle Trask at this point, or maybe they're battling. I don't really know. But either way, I honestly did think that they were maybe going to take a chance on Will Levis. I can't see Baker Mayfield being there for multiple years, but I guess we'll find out. Either way, though, the defensive lineman does give them some more power down there. They don't have a whole lot of strength down there. I don't think a whole lot of explosiveness as like a big thing for him. I think it's his speed and stuff. So it was a great pick, and overall they had a very good draft. So they're going to go in A. And then speaking of Will Levis, the Titans draft. So they, of course, did select Will Levis. And they also got Peter Skoronski, who was a very, very good choice for being a tackle. And really, the Titans, I think they had a great draft. So I'm going to put them in A as well. I think that was a great pick. And yeah, honestly, I'm not really going to talk much more about that because I don't think there really is much more to talk about with the Titans. Next is Washington. And also, before I go into Washington, I want to say that I called the Buccaneers edge rusher Casey. It's Cansey. That's my fault. I did not realize that until I was actually reading over the players, making sure I was doing everything right. And I was saying the name wrong. So that's my fault there. Over to Washington. Washington, I didn't love their draft, honestly. The biggest thing for me is Emmanuel Forbes. They picked him before Christian Gonzalez was the very next pick. And I'm guessing the Patriots must have been kind of shocked they did not pick Gonzalez. Forbes might end up being great, but in my opinion, Gonzalez was definitely the pick to kind of select there. But you know what? May I be proven wrong there? I don't really know. But for Washington, they just got to go in... I'm just going to say C for them, honestly. I didn't love their draft. But yeah, so that's going to do it for the draft. I'm not going to move any teams around, honestly. I'm just going to leave it like this. And whatever you guys think, comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings. I'm really excited for the NFL season. We have a lot of things to talk about in this entire offseason. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I do Madden NFL videos. NFL videos, we do tier lists like this. We do any kind of NFL news and talking over stuff like that. We do week picks when the season's going on, and then we also do NFL quiz videos. Madden, we have No Money Spent series. We do gameplays. We do pack openings, new promo news, all that kind of stuff. So thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.